Jacky, thank you very much for talking to us on Talk Beliefs. First of all, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yes, I was born into the Exclusive Brethren and left them when I was 18 years old. So I spent the first 18 years of my life within the church. They're called the Exclusive Brethren or the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. They're recently rebranded themselves.
And for those who never heard about the sect, who exactly are the Exclusive Brethren and what is your history with them?
The Exclusive Brethren are part of the umbrella group called the Plymouth Brethren, and they were started in the middle of about 1840 something by an evangelical preacher called John Nelson Darby, and he broke away from the mainstream church because he believed in a certain amount of separation from the evil that's in the world.
Jacky, why does the sect refer to itself as exclusive? Does the sect tell its members that they're special in some way?
Well, interestingly, when I was in the sect, we didn't refer to ourselves as Exclusive Brethren. We referred to ourselves as Brethren, or Plymouth Brethren, or simple Christians who live their lives according to the scriptures. I think Exclusive Brethren the word exclusive has probably been a name put on them by outsiders because of the way they exclude themselves from the world.
Yeah.
But inside the Brethren, we weren't told that we were Exclusive Brethren. We were told we were Brethren, Christians, simple people, living separate from the world.
Yeah, and that extends even as far as like not associating with others, not eating with others, is that right?
Yes, it does. I mean, the separation over the years has got, I would say, more extreme. Certainly in the 40s and 50s, they were an evangelical Brethren church, not that I was amongst them then, but from what my parents told me, they were an evangelical Christian church that did live reasonably simple lives, but they mixed with people outside. So, for example, if you had members of your family who weren't amongst the church, you would still go and see them. You would still stay with them, go and have meals with them, spend occasions together. There was no restrictions on that. Members of the Brethren mixed with family members that weren't in the Brethren. They ate with them, they drank with them. And then in the late 50s, early 60s, the leader of the Brethren at the time brought out a rule, I suppose, that eating and drinking with anybody outside the Brethren was an association that they didn't want to have. And it was an association that they stopped any form of social contact with anybody outside the Brethren. So at that point it meant people that did have members of their family who weren't in the Brethren had to bluntly say to them, I can't come and stay with you anymore.
And this was based on a Bible verse, wasn't it?
Yeah, this was based on, primarily as I understood it, the verse from 2 Timothy 2 that speaks about departing from iniquity. And the principle of separation that I believe they follow now with the eating and drinking is that it would be an unclean yoke to eat and drink with anybody that you didn't share what they call the Lord's Supper with, which most Christians would know as communion. As they only share their communion with their own, therefore they cannot eat and drink with anybody outside of their community.
Oh, I see. I know that cults often go to extreme lengths to protect their public image, going as far as lying, covering up abuse, and so on. Was this evident within the Exclusive Brethren?
When you were in the Brethren, this wasn't evident. When you're amongst them, certainly growing up as a teenager, I had no idea of what was going on. I'm also pretty sure that most of the decent members of the Brethren have no idea what is going on between the Brethren and people that leave and how they're being treated. I also think most people in the Brethren would have no idea of what is being covered up and of the public relations exercise that's going on to try and improve the image of the Brethren. So when you're in the Brethren, you have no idea, unless you happen to be one of the people making those decisions. When you're outside of the Brethren and you start to dig a little bit deeper, you begin to realise whether it's lies or incredible spins put on the truth. It's a fine line.
Yeah.
An example of that, there was an interview done with an ex-member in which she said, we didn't have makeup. Brethren women are not allowed to wear makeup.
Right.
The rebuttal that the Brethren put out to that said, Brethren women can wear makeup if they choose to do so. And if you analyse that statement, they are refuting the fact that women don't wear makeup, but what they're saying is it's women's choice not to wear makeup. But actually, when you're in the Brethren, it's not your choice not to wear makeup, because you're not allowed to. So you know if you wear makeup, you will get into trouble. So they put some very clever spins on things.
So they put that out there about the choices to sort of equivocate things, and but of course you feel pressured not.
Yes, you couldn't actually say that that was an outright lie, that Brethren women can wear makeup if they choose to do so. But you know, as a Brethren woman, you would not choose to wear makeup because it is not allowed.
Yeah.
So what they would then say is, they say a similar thing about university. They will say, our young people choose not to go to university. But their young people are not allowed to go to university. It's not in their thinking to go to university. So is it lies, or is it an outward spin that makes them seem plausible?
So you reached a point where you decided you had to leave. What compelled you to do this, and what is the Brethren's view on leaving the sect?
The Brethren's view on leaving the sect, I would say, in their eyes, there is no legitimate reason to leave. I can't think of any reason that they would say, yeah, we take your point of view on board, go with our blessing. And I can't think of any circumstances where they've done that. They do not like people leaving. For me personally, I was put in a situation where I had to make a choice. And the Brethren at the time, we are talking 30 years ago, but they had a system whereby if somebody had committed a misdemeanour in the Brethren eyes, they would do something called shut that person up, restrict them. Restricting or shutting up meant that you were not allowed to go to Brethren meetings, and I'd add to that that Brethren meetings happened every evening and Saturday morning and 5 times on a Sunday. Brethren meetings were your only social life.
Wow.
You were not allowed to go to Brethren meetings. You were not allowed to eat and drink with your family that you lived with while you were in this process of being restricted. And the idea was that you would have visits from elders amongst the Brethren who they called colloquially priests, but they were not in any way trained or ordained priests. It was just a term that was applied to people. And they would come and see you when it suited, and they would let you go back to the Brethren fold when they deemed that you had repented enough or got right about whatever it was, misdemeanour.
And were you literally shut up in a house?
Yeah. Yeah, you were shut up in a house. You would go to your place of work, which 30 years ago may or may not be amongst the Brethren. But apart from that, my husband was shut up, and he had to live in his bedroom, and his mother would bring his meals up on a tray to him because he couldn't eat and drink with his family while he was shut up. That is a process. I mean, we used to laugh and say it's a bit like being put in a cooler, you know, until you realise the error of your ways. So my parents were shut up. They had been shut up before when I was 16. And at that point, I have 2 older brothers. All 3 of us left home and went to live with the Brethren family, separate families.
Yeah.
They were shut up, I can't remember for how long, 3-4 months, and then came back, and then we were reunited as a family. My parents were shut up because my middle brother, who at that point was 19, had stayed in a hotel. He had a job whereby he occasionally had to travel for work.
Yeah.
And work obviously put him up in a hotel overnight, and he did that. The Brethren said he should have stayed with Brethren, and he got into trouble for it. And my parents were shut up. I'm not quite sure why, but because my brother stayed in a hotel. So I and my eldest brother were put in a situation where we had to immediately leave home and go and live with another Brethren family. And I didn't want to leave home again. So I asked for a little bit of time. And I remember quite clearly the reply from the priest at the time when I said, I don't want to leave home immediately. He said, don't let the devil in over this. I remember that reply quite clearly. And gradually, I suppose that was a turning point over the next few weeks. I can't do this. I can't be part of this. Although I had had a lot of questions in my head for the last year or so, I think that was the turning point. My parents felt the same. One of my 2 brothers felt the same. So we wrote a letter to the Brethren saying we weren't coming back. And I never ever heard from them again, ever.
Gosh.
All my friends, everybody, my eldest brother, we never heard from again. That was a long time ago, and the Brethren now say that they do not practice the shutting up routine, that they no longer do that. That's what they say. The next stage after being shut up, if, say, you had got into trouble and were not deemed to be repentant or were rebellious, would be what the Brethren call withdrawing from. Withdrawing from is final. You are no longer part of the Brethren. So that means that you would have access to your family cut off, if indeed your family stayed amongst the Brethren. You would have access to all the friends you'd grown up with cut off. You're out high and dry. And I don't know if I was ever withdrawn from. Nobody ever told me. I didn't really care at the time. I was glad to be out of the Brethren. But there are plenty of people who, over the years, have been withdrawn from and had nowhere to go. My husband was told he had 2 weeks to leave home. So he packed his van up, and that was it.
So this sounds similar to Jehovah's Witnesses' disfellowshipping, and Scientology, I think they call it disconnection.
Absolutely.
Where, yeah, you are literally cut off.
You're literally cut off.
Family don't talk to you, or members in the group don't talk to you.
Yes, yes. And I can still remember I would occasionally bump into members of the group, and not long after I'd left, and it would have quite a devastating nervous effect. I would literally shake from head to toe. I don't anymore, but when I first left, you'd have that effect. I remember actually seeing a girl who was the same age as me and I would have considered a very good friend, and she didn't see me, but the effect it had took a moment for me to recover from.
Yeah.
Because you know that these people have been told, well, I didn't know what they'd been told about me personally, but they'd been told you're wicked, you've let the devil in, you've gone the way of the world, and you mustn't have anything to do with them.
In fact, that's what they call outsiders, like worldly people, is that right?
They call them worldlies, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's their name for them. And a worldly and basically, yes, a worldly person is anybody who has not been in the Brethren, somebody who's left the Brethren, amongst the Brethren, is often viewed as worse than a worldly person, because in their eyes you've had the light but you've chosen to turn your back on it. So you're considered worse. The worldly people haven't had the light, they weren't born into the position.
Yeah, I think there's something similar. I'm probably thinking of Islam as like, if you are in it and then you leave it, that's worse than never having heard it in the first place.
Yes, there was definitely that feeling amongst the Brethren when I was in, that the ex-members were the real ones doing the devil's work.
Jacky, you've been actively helping members who want to leave the Brethren and who are struggling to find their way out and start a new life. Can you tell us about this process and the people you've helped?
Yeah, leaving the Brethren is very difficult. It's difficult emotionally and practically. To go right back from the basics, the Brethren amongst themselves are a pretty strong community. If you like that community and you can abide by the Brethren lifestyle, you'll be looked after from cradle to grave. So you'll go to school from the age of 7 upwards. The Brethren now have their own schools, so they're taken out of mainstream schools and go into the Brethren schools called focus schools.
And there are special buses as well, isn't there? I think I've seen.
That's right, yes.
Yeah.
They because obviously the numbers at their own schools are quite small, they travel quite long distances to get into school. So Brethren, women usually, the wives, the mothers, will drive the children in buses and so on. There's a strong community there. So you go through Brethren school. I went to a mainstream school, a normal school, and the Brethren schools have actually only sort of started in the last, I think it was about 2002, and at first it was just at secondary level. They've now lowered it down from the age of 7 upwards, so it's relatively recent that their children have gone to their own schools. I went to a mainstream school, so I had a brushing up against the world amongst my peers as I grew up as a teenager, but the kids now go to a Brethren school from the age of 7 to 18. They are expected to work for a Brethren company. The Brethren they run very successful businesses. They are very clever in running businesses. They are quite a wealthy sect. And every member of the Brethren is expected to work for the Brethren. Again, 30 years ago, when I left school, we weren't expected to work for Brethren. Some did, some didn't. And I got a job outside of the Brethren, which made it much easier for me to leave because I had reference points. I had points of contact with people I worked with that once I explained the situation, they could help me with adjusting. But the point of saying that is now, if you reach an age of maturity, say in your 20s, and want to leave, your experience of the world outside the Brethren is virtually nothing. So you're knowing how to interact, how to look for jobs, how to go to interviews, how to shake hands with people, all the things that children are normally brought up with to learn as they mature are just not there. Brethren children have restricted internet access. The Brethren say that that is only the same internet access restrictions that any parents would put on to protect children, but it isn't. They go from the reverse. Rather than putting protection on internet access, they will only allow their computers to access certain websites. Again, the reason I'm saying that, if you're a young person trying to leave the Brethren, you can't just go online and research help groups and support groups and look on job sites to find jobs. You can't do that because you don't have access to that. So it is very, very difficult to leave. There is a website being set up whereby they run a support network, mostly almost 100% of ex-Brethren members worldwide, who are able to offer some sort of help and support if people that want to leave get in touch. The biggest problem young people who want to leave have is once they've got in touch with ex-members, they have to be incredibly secretive about it. If the brethren find out they're talking to ex-members, they're basically in big trouble. And I know that for a fact because of young people I have tried to help and they've been found out and they're still in the brethren. They haven't been able to, you get to a point where they've almost planned their escape and you've found a safe place for them to go because that's what they want, and it's arranged, and at the 11th hour they've been found out, and it's not good for them then. It's not good for them. They'll often get sent away. Gosh. So they can't contact ex-members. So helping people to leave is actually very difficult because of the restrictions the brethren put on, and the brethren don't want, certainly their young people, to leave. They really believe that they are protecting them by keeping them amongst the brethren. You know, it sounds as if I'm defending them, but they do really believe that. That is their argument, that if a young person of 18 to 25 goes out into the world, they believe they'll fall into a life of sin and debauchery, and
like it's inevitable. It's
inevitable. It is going to happen.
Yeah.
And they will tell the young person that as well. That if you leave, this is what will happen. And then that, of course, instills the fear in the young person to leave. But equally, there are people in there who they're desperate to leave. They just want to be able to train to do a job or do something with their life other than work for a brethren and a life of brethrenism and brethren meetings.
Do you think it's a high percentage of people right now who are in the various brethren sects who are trying to leave, who want to leave, thinking about leaving?
It's a difficult one to answer because you can't actually get hard and fast numbers. I know that worldwide there are a lot of ex-brethren members who are helping and supporting brethren members to leave. Sometimes it's successful, sometimes it isn't. The problem is, if you are trying to help someone to leave, you wouldn't normally talk about it because you have to be very, very careful. Even you do not know, you cannot, if somebody inside contacts you and says, I want to leave, can you help? You have to be incredibly careful that that doesn't get back to the brethren. Because that person's chances of leaving are scuppered then, totally scuppered.
Okay, wow.
So, yeah, we have helped one person leave, and that was very successful. She lived with us for a while till she found her own feet. There have been attempts to help other young people leave. 2 particular occasions it was unsuccessful.
Right, so if anyone wants to get in touch with you, how do they go about it?
Well, probably the best way to do that is through a website that's been set up to give a lot of information about the brethren, and also, but primarily it was set up to give help and support to people that leave, and that's Wikipedia. And on that website there is a lot of people worldwide who would be able to help. The website actually has what they call a red panic button. So if somebody is amongst the brethren, they can press that button and it will trigger a response, and then we take it from there, basically. That's how it works. That's how the young girl who we helped leave managed to do so. The problem anybody within the brethren has with finding the website is that they would need normal internet access. The brethren are supposed to buy their computers from a brethren company, and as I mentioned earlier, the internet access is heavily restricted. So the only way anyone within the brethren could find that website, they would have to go and get their own device, and they would have to do it secretly, illicitly, and find it themselves.
Yeah, so we will definitely put a link to wikipedia.com in the show notes and the email address as well, which hopefully will help some people who want to leave the Brethren. Okay, so thank you very much, Jacky, for taking the time to talk with us and for all the excellent work that you do to help others.